Welcome to another interesting video, hopefully. So this time I'm going to go over something called a magic question. This was developed by Rachael Stephen, and it is a brainstorming device to help you come up with more interesting, more epic, I guess, kind of answers to your brainstorming questions. So instead of asking what is something that could happen in this book, you would ask what is the coolest thing that could happen in this book. So instead of how do we get from A to B, you would ask how do I get from A to B while completely breaking my characters. So things like that, where you add a twist to the question to make it more, to help it facilitate you get the most interesting answers, to get rid of the fluff answers and get down to the more world-specific, plot-specific, character-specific answers. So today I wanted to explore some world-building magic questions that I have come up with. I have come up with 9 different questions to help you just see how your environment can interact with your characters and help develop your character to be the most, like, a character that is rooted in your story. So you wouldn't be able to just replace your character with a character from another book. It wouldn't work because your character is actually rooted in your story, rooted in your world, and the environment has helped shape your character. So the first question that it came up is, what type of environment would make my main character grow the most? So a main character needs to be rooted in their environment. They need to be a part of their world, or if they're not a part of their world, have it be obvious that they are alien to their world and are uncomfortable there. I should not be able to pick up your character and replace them with another one and have the story still work. With this particular question, I like how it asks, how would it make the character grow the most? So what about this environment is going to make them stretch and be outside of their comfort zone and need to grow and develop in this story so that there is conflict, there is growth, and it is not a flat character. Some examples could be there are hordes of orcs that are threatening to take over the Shire if they fail their mission. It could be that there are Hunger Games that are annual, and so this type of environment fosters this type of competition between districts to keep them fighting against each other and not fighting against the capital. My second question I came up with is, what is it about the environment the main character finds challenging? So we need to be able to have different challenges specific to that environment that will spur the character on for growth. So it could be the main character wants to get married, but there are no singles in their area, and so maybe they need to explore somewhere else to try and find options. Maybe there is a lack of oxygen left in the space station and they need to figure out how to be resourceful and extend their life. Whatever it is, there needs to be a challenge, something that will stretch the main character and make them grow. There needs to be able to be conflict, and the character needs to adapt. My third question is, what type of environment would the villain/antagonist thrive the most in? So while the main character is struggling and stretching and trying to grow, this villain or antagonist, whichever you could have multiple antagonists in one main villain, like a Draco Malfoy versus a Voldemort, but whatever it is, they need to be able to thrive in the environment that your main character is in. So by answering this question, you create a villain main antagonist that will be a great foil for your main character who is struggling. They will thrive only in this type of environment specifically, and it seems like the world was created just for them to give them privilege. I like this type of question for when the main character is an underdog and the main villain is already established or is growing rapidly and they are having the time of their life and the main character must struggle to defeat them. Voldemort would have no idea what to do if he was in the Matrix, and Mr. Smith would probably not thrive as much in the real world if he were stuck in magical Britain. So these main characters and these villains both need to be rooted in their environment, in their specific story, and not be generic.
My fourth question is, what type of environment most supports the main character's misbelief? For both tragic and heroic characters, the character must have a misbelief. A tragic main character will not be able to overcome their misbelief, but the heroic character will be able to see the error of their ways, overcome, and be able to grow. These misbeliefs need to be rooted in the main character and how they've grown up, whether it's nature versus nurture, and be able to see how the environment shaped their misbelief. One of my characters for one of my books is going to be a rebel in a Star Wars-esque rebel alliance who is fighting against an oligarchy. His misbelief is that if you are working with the oligarchy or have ever worked with the oligarchy, you are beyond saving. So through the novel, he must be able to overcome that misbelief and be able to learn to forgive. That particular misbelief is rooted mostly for him because he was born on a rebel base. That is all he's ever known. And those who come from the oligarchy, he immediately mistrusts and must learn to be able to work with others. Question number 5. How isolated does your main character need to feel? There are many different types of isolation. You could be actually alone, or you could be alone in a crowd. There are different types of feeling, whether you are mentally isolated or physically isolated. If they are physically isolated, that should definitely be in your environment, whether it's a desert and they are alone and stranded on a planet or an asteroid. There are many different ways to isolate your character, whether it be in a box, like in a room and stuck in a basement. There are many different ways to isolate your main character, and it depends on the scope and scale. If they are mentally isolated but not physically, you may want to set your story in a city where they are surrounded by crowds of people milling about, going about their own day, but not paying attention to your main character, who just walks among the crowd lost. Your main character may not need to be isolated at all. For their character arc, they may need to have a fall, so they may be completely surrounded by friends and loved ones and then have a fall and then become isolated later on. So depending on the environment that they grow up in versus what they end up in can greatly affect how they feel isolated and whether or not isolation needs to play any part in your story at all. Question number 6. What job would stretch my main character the most? Now this is probably more for adult novels, as other main characters might still be in school, might be in elementary school, might not even be in school yet. But I really like this idea that jobs should stretch your main character and make them grow. This should only be used probably if your main character's job is going to be a part of the story and not just a sidebar, here's what goes on during the day, and then the rest of the story takes place during the weekend in a crash course of a murder mystery. I like this idea that your job should be world-specific and should be a challenge for your main character to cause them to grow, so you can have that B-plot of more growth, more change, more stretching. On the flip side, we have question number 7. What job would my main character enjoy the most? I like this question for characters who are more complacent in where they're at and need to be pushed for a growth. So a Bilbo Baggins who needs to have that call to adventure. Or someone who just wants to have a cushy job. This can be used to show the character this is what you thought you want, and they get the job, and they realize it's not what they really want, and what they truly want in life is something completely different. So they have that change of heart and that change of lifestyle where they get rid of that job and go and find their true calling. So it's the dichotomy of what do they think they want and what do they really need. All right, I love question 8. What scope of the world will put the most pressure on the main character? Not all stories need to be galactic empires and armies of the undead. Sometimes you need to have a more personal reason for stories to happen, a more personal vendetta that a main character is following, and just keep it grounded in reality for some stories. There are some stories that take place entirely in one room that do deep character studies. There are some that take place in a city, and there are some that take place across empires and galaxies. So the scope of your story will determine which ways your character needs to grow. and sometimes your scope needs to be scaled back to focus on what's most important and not get lost in the world building. For your specific main character, where will they feel the most pressure? Will it be if they are stuck inside one room where they are alone with their thoughts? Would it be if they had the pressure of the fate of the universe on their shoulder? What is it that will put the most pressure on your main character, cause them to have their darkest moment, and rise from the ashes and grow? And the last question, just for fun. Question number 9. What are the main character's favorite holidays/festivals to attend? This gives you the chance to develop festivals and holidays and celebrations in your world, whether it be Earth or not. And also, it lets you focus on what are the values of your main character versus the values of the world. If your main character has no family, they may despise certain festivals that celebrate family and family unity. If they are a spoiled brat, they may love Christmas. Or they may be deeply religious and love Christmas for the non-commercial reasons. Whatever the case, explore your character's psyche and realize what they hold dear to them, what's important, and if there are any ways that they can show that in the world in contrast with what the world values, or if they are the same. So those were 9 questions that I came up with that are magic questions. So questions that should be able to help you dive a little bit deeper, connect your character and your environment together to help your world building be more interesting and more specific to your story and your world. So I hope these helped. Let me know if you want any more, and I will gladly make another video. A special thank you to Rachael Stephen, who introduced me to this concept. She came up with this idea of magic questions, and I will link her channel down below. But it is an amazing system to help you get through the fluff answers and get to the nitty-gritty answers and get to your story and plot and characters and things that are specific to your world. So hope they helped. Let me know, and I will see you in the next video.